Prince Harry's writing his book, and I wasn't going to wait any longer. I needed to talk to our mate in the UK, Neil Sean, about all of this. $20 million for the Sook book. It'll be there. It'll be like reading a teenager's diary, no doubt in parts. Obviously, he's got a sad story about his mum, but geez, there's going to be a lot of guff and garbage around it. I can't wait for the chapter entitled When I Was Playing With My Toys in Windsor Castle.
Hi, Paul. How are you? Now, listen, what I really want to know, well, two things really. The Greta Garbo Act went quite quickly, didn't it? You know, we want to be alone. That's out the window now. And what I think is interesting, two bits really, will it come with crayons or do you have to buy those as extra to colour the pictures in afterwards? But you're never really sure. On a more serious note, Penguin Random House must be nuts. The book publishing industry is in a major decline right now. You would have thought with the pandemic, people would start to read books. Here's the problem that you've got with Prince Harry's book. We know the story. And what you've got to do when you are somebody like him, they pay you that money to give you some dirt. So he's really going to have to turn over some people. And I think that's such a terrible situation to be in. If you really dislike your family that much for money, but, I tell you what is interesting. No word from Dame Meghan, you'll notice. She's letting him be the baddie throughout all of this.
Yeah, so how does this work? Because, let's have a look at what they've been able to amass. Now, I understand that, that they needed the Netflix deal because, you've got to pay the rent, right? But that was a lot of money, right? Now it's the book deal that's even more money on top of that. Just how much money do they think you need to live? Because they've got tens of millions.
Well, you say that, let me tell you, the inside track on the Netflix deal, you don't get all of that money. They put that out. It's a bit like what Louis B. Mayer used to do with MGM and say, here's $1 million contract. But you only get that once the films start to make money. Now, the first thing they're doing, as we know, is this sort of cartoony thing, which has got the backing of Elton John's husband, David Furnish. So that's a surefire hit, right? And you do kind of think, everything he puts his hands to, you never see it again. So why would you get him on board? It's kind of like, why bother? And I think just the topic of that, meeting historical figures through, and it's some girl's journey, it's all very woke, all very boring. If they were making something, magical that children could be really involved with, like a Disney flick, then people would be interested. The other problem with the book deal is this. He's got the first part of it written, just the first synopsis, right? And then they brought in a ghostwriter. They're not cheap, particularly this guy. So when they've got this back and forth, a lot of people are saying, oh, it's because next year, we've got the platinum celebrations, that's why he's going to bring it out then. No, legally, they're going to take a long time to go through this book because remember, in the deluded Mogadon mind of Prince Harry, this is his truth. But we know the real truth. And, this is about a guy who's lived in a castle, privileged life, really never had to work at all in his entire life. And then he's sort of, back bitching on the people that paid for him for years. Where's this book going to go? In Poundland? Who would buy it, really?
Yeah, but also we know what happens here too, which is that there's this sort of endless cycle of, which is good for those of us that want to poke fun, but this endless cycle of, this bit's in, this bit's out, this prince is mentioned, this princess isn't, the Queen's upset, the Queen's, and all of that, just a constant distraction, again, for a lady who lost her husband this year, seriously. Like, if he wants to tell the story of his life, can I make a slight suggestion? The inevitability of the time would be perhaps after your grandmother has passed away.
What I've been really impressed with on a more serious note, Paul, is the fact that, publishers have been respectful so far about books on the late Prince Philip. Everybody has a colourful life, good and bad periods, And I think for Harry, the desperation to just, as you rightly said at the beginning, to amass all of this money. For what reason, And I think what's also interesting is a lot of us, and again, on a more serious note, can see something only of disaster looming because what you've got to look at, the bigger picture is the driving force in this. It's him admitting he has mental problems and issues with growing up. It's just him solely. Meghan's nowhere to be seen. And that, of course, paints a very different picture in the bigger picture, should things go equally wrong, if you get the drift.
Very good point. The best thing about $20 million is split in half. It's still an awful lot of money. Thank you, mate. Do appreciate it. Thank you, Neil. Neil Shaw there.
Real pleasure.
In the UK, never pulls a punch, and that's what we like.